What's up guys, and welcome to another episode of In the Studio with FM. Now, today I figured I would take you guys through my new single, Edge of Love, featuring Nevve, which is out on Dim Mak right now.
On the edge of love.
So without further ado, let's hop into the computer and I'm going to show you guys how I made my new single, Edge of Love. Okay, so welcome to the Logic project of my single, Edge of Love. Now, just to give you guys an overview, the track is in 104 BPM. And although it might sound kind of simple, the track is actually consisting of 151 tracks, which one could argue is too much. So I grouped everything up, so I have like 30 or so tracks here. Now, grouping is a tool that I've been using a lot in my productions, especially the ones with a lot of tracks, because it enables me to focus more and have less scrolling up and down. Because you could imagine having 150 tracks, just spending all your time scrolling up and down trying to find stuff. So I've been grouping everything here, and the good thing about grouping is that you could also put plugins on the group strip. So let's start it from the top here. Now I got the acapella from Nevve, which was already processed a little bit, so I didn't really do much to the vocal. Added some compression and automated some pumpers so it sidechains a bit more somewhere in the track here on the hook. And then on the group bus here, I have the Neutron plugin from iZotope, which is awesome for mixing. Now I got the vocal from Nevve, and it sounded like this.
Did I get this feeling from the flashing lights, or was it all because of you?
Alright, so I'm just gonna assume that you guys have heard the entire track already. But you probably noticed that the vocal is ducking. Now, usually I would sidechain with a plugin, but for this one, I actually did the sidechain manually. And it's something I've been doing recently, just to control the sidechain more and avoid weird leveling thing. I know you can do it within a compressor, to just level everything out, but I kind of like doing this manual way. That way I can tailor how much sidechain or how much ducking happens on each individual kick. Now this might take like 20 minutes, but sometimes it could be worth it. Now moving on for the verse here. Let me play you guys the entire thing here just to get a feel of what it sounds like.
Did I get this feeling from the flashing lights, or was it all because of you?
So I try to keep everything sounding a bit dry and analog. My big inspiration for this verse was obviously Louis Vuitton, Louis the Child, Weathen, like the new generation electronic R&B hip hop stuff. But let's move on with the drums here. Super simple. Basically, let's just go through it here. So you have the kick, which is from the, let's see, LF kick O2. This is from the Louis Vuitton Splice sample pack. Loving the samples there. I didn't really do much to it, except added a bit of low end, took a bit of the low mid out, and I put Neutron from iZotope on it again, just to correlate with the other plugins, and also just to help control it a bit more. For the claps and stuff, I layered 3 different claps. First one sounds like this. Really hand clap, almost dry. And then I have this, just to give it a bit more of a wide feel, because the hand clap only would sound a bit too thin, if you know what I mean. And then the last one is the offbeat clap, which goes like this. So it has kind of a natural short reverb on it, which is kind of cool for this track because it kind of fits in the whole vibe. And now I have my synths here. Now bear in mind that this was actually made a couple months ago, so my memory on this track is not that fresh anymore. So this is actually a preset from my Vital Serum Presets number 2 pack on Splice. It's called Juno. So you see the LFO here actually goes to the filter. The cutoff on the filter goes up every time the LFO resets because it's on envelope mode. And I also added a layer to my lead which sounds like this. This is really wide, a bit more detuned, and has more voices in the wavetables, which is great for layering because standing alone this would sound really weird in the sound imaging. So I spread this one out a lot with sample delay. Let's hear the first one here. Really centered, single voice, not too detuned. And then you have this one on top of it. So it instantly gets a lot wider and makes everything sound more full. Now for bass on the verse, I have a simple Serum 808. It's basically just a sine wave thing. I distorted the mids on it a little bit just to make it come through on smaller speakers and headphones. Oh yeah, and I didn't mention that on the lead synth, but I have glides automated here on the first notes. There we go. So it glides up from, I think it's 6 semitones down or maybe an octave. And that is basically the verse. I still practice getting better at less is more, and I think this verse is, I think this is a somewhat good example of less is more. So I tried to keep the verse really dry, and then going into the pre-hook here, I wanted everything to mellow out and get more atmospheric. I don't know if that even makes sense, but I hope you get what I mean. So going from a simple and compressed verse soundscape to a more wide and ambient soundscape. Damn, this sounds so weird, but have a listen and let me know if you hear what I mean. Okay, freeze break. Let me show you guys what I have going on here on the pre-chorus. Now, instrument-wise, I have a sub bass, simple saturated sub. I have a mid layer here which sounds like this. Which is like a re-space type thing from Serum. And then for all the stuff, I have a piano. What you can see here on the MIDI is that I played this on the piano and then I just copied the MIDI to all the other tracks actually. So I have this guitar thing which is like a marimba and a guitar stacked together in the plugin called Signal from Output. Then I have an ARP, which is from the Analog Strings plugin from Output as well. And then I have a little pad and a little plug thing going on. Now we have the pad coming in here. So the pad is just emphasizing all the other chords just when it builds up to give it more of an electronic feel. Because all these instruments sound somewhat organic. I also have a pad here from Serum, which is from my sample pack on Elixir, called Juno 2. It's like a pretty old school type pad thing. You can hear it here. Holy crap. This is kind of like the lead on the break, or the pre-chorus. Yeah, so let me play you guys all the instruments that I have on the pre-chorus here. Okay, so I also have a guitar playing here. And I really wish I could play the guitar, but I can't. So I sampled this from a sample I found on Splice. And I basically just used the Sound Shifter plugin, and then I pitched everything using Flex Pitch in Logic. So you just have it here, and then you can switch it up and down. And then the guitars sound like this. The funny thing with these guitars is that they are actually a bit out of key, but it gives it something cool because they're not like a lead, they're more in the background. So with all the instruments and the guitars together, it sounds like this. Yep. I always have a lot of different noises and ambient sounds, white noises, sweeps, all sorts of different samples going on here. Another example is here when it goes from the verse to the pre-chorus. I have a lot of different sweeps and foley's. Now this is a very good tip for you guys trying to add depth to your production, because this is something that makes the soundscape and the imaging sound a lot more full. So let's move on to the hook here. It sounds like this.
Sit back and enjoy the view on the edge of love. Edge of love.
So that's the hook right there. So I actually put the Endless Smile plugin on the master channel strip. So it adds a bit of intensity leading up to the drop. It's basically a plugin for lazy producers who doesn't want to add more rises and low cut their stuff leading up to the drop. But it gets the job done. You can hear it here.
Just throw it away. Sit back and enjoy the view on the edge of.
Alright, so let's start from the top with the vocals here on the drop. I actually had the vocal lead cut off right when the kick comes in, and I was really in doubt with this, whether or not I should have it go or whether I should have the vocal, the word love, be full, so it sounded like this. I chose to mute the love, so all the vocals mute when the kicks come in to give it more impact. And the vocal on the drop pretty much sounds like. So this was actually something I cut out from the ad-libs that Nevve sent me from the C part of the track. And I just used it as a hook. And I basically just took the lead and pitched it up, adding the regular one with a lot of pumping on it. So a lot of sidechain 4 to the floor going on here. Let me play you guys the vocal lead and the kick here. So when I got the acapella from Nevve, I knew that I had to make synths and leads on the drop that fit the vocal. So she goes on the ba ba ba, and I knew I just had to make like a chord step, go like bum bum bum. Let's just go through the drums real quick here. Now, I know the drums sound kind of simple, but it is actually a shit ton of layering going on. Yep, so we have the kicks here. And it's basically a hip-hop type kick with not a lot high-end going on. And then the mix with just this kick sounded a bit dull. So I had to add a click from a more EDM type kick, I guess. So this is just everything above 2K-ish. Just to add a click. Let me play you guys the kicks together. Yep, that's it. I also have a kick that's offbeat and that's not really quantized. Just to give it the bounce. Like boom, boom. So everything kind of feels like it's jumping a little bit. And then we have these snares and claps. Now I know what you're thinking. Really? You got 6 snares here? It's awful, man. Like, I put 1 snare in, then I'm like, okay, let's add a clap or snare on top of this. And then I felt like it needed, like, high end, so let's add another. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So I added 3 more to get the end result sounding like this. So I basically have a clap / snare operating in different frequency ranges. Like I have a clap that operates in the high range with a lot of reverb. I have a snare that gives it a bit of punch in the mid range. And I felt like I needed to stack a lot of snares and claps to make this track sound full. Now, funny thing about the drums in this track is I felt like without these loops right here, there wasn't enough going on in the drums. So I added a bunch of loops that I bounced out from one of my really, really old funk instrumentals. Now they sound like this. So they really give it a lot, like a lot of hats, a lot of offbeat toms and fills. All the drums together sounds really full and layered if you listen to it by itself. Yep. And then moving on to, let's do the leads before we do the bass here. Now this is a stack of a few different lead sounds. And together they sound like this. Yep. So the main sound of the drop is this one. Bam, there we go. So the main thing about this lead here is that you have a slow attack, which operates the cutoff on the low pass filter. So every time you play a note, it takes 103 milliseconds for the filter to go up. So the second synth lead is a layer to the first one, which is basically the same synth, but I low-cutted it a bit more and spread it out in a stereo image. So it sounds like this. You can hear them together. And then down here I have, it's actually the same preset that I just took and did a different LFO thing with. So it kind of filters up. It goes boom, 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 boom. So it sounds like this. So you basically have the same sound here, just with a whole bunch of different LFO feels. It is basically just to add some detail in a track in between kicks and snares. I also have a bit of guitar and effects going on in the drop here. So basically just a lot of short samples and fills. And for the chants, now I always have chants on my drop. And the chants I use for this one, you'll probably recognize. I sampled it from a 90s hip-hop song. And these chants are just to help out with the bounce. Now let me play you guys the drums and the snares. Alright, so the chants really make everything bounce a lot more. Moving on to the last thing of the drop here, which is the bass. And they sound like this. So what I wanted for the basses here is to have an organic feel. Like I wanted them to bounce like it was played on an actual bass while retaining the electronic edge. And this, I spent a lot of time layering these basses. Now the main bass sounds like this. This is a preset from Substance from Output. And so I added this one underneath it. So this one has like a detuned wide feel to it. It kind of has that K-Tronada vibe. I have a sub underneath as well. Now, these basses are all from different plugins and have different attack and decay times. And at first this was pretty weird, but once I got everything sidechained and pumped, it actually made a lot of sense. So these three together sound like this. And then I have the filler basses, which is small notes and fills in between the other ones, and they sound like this. I don't think this makes much sense playing without the kick. Let me just play for you guys with the kick. The main key here with making everything bounce with these basses is also not to quantize your bass too much. So you see on my MIDI here that everything is a bit offbeat. Like none of the notes here are actually on beat. Everything is a bit delayed, which can work in some instances, and in some instances it would be, in some tracks it would be weird to not have everything quantized. But in this track it kind of made sense. So besides that, I have a few small things like, or this one. And I basically make all these in different contact plugins. I use analog strings from Output a lot. I use the Native Instruments ones a lot, like this one. It's a harp plugin, super random. Just came across it. And I have a lot of stuff like that all around the track, just to make everything sound a bit more detailed without overdoing it all. Alright, so the second verse, pre-chorus, and hook here is almost the same as the first one. Now let me just play you guys the second drop here, because I added some small things here just to make it stand out a bit more.
Enjoy the view on the edge of love.
Okay, now I added some voice chops from Exhale and some plugs from Signal, and they sound like this. Now the main key with making everything fit in this mix here is to sidechain everything accordingly, because there's a lot of different things going on at the same time here, so you really have to focus on sidechaining everything properly to make everything sit right in the mix. So that is pretty much how I made Edge of Love, which is out now on Dim Mak. Make sure you guys go check it out. If you have any further questions, just comment down below and I'll be happy to answer it. Now, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!
Baby, I'm a son on the beat.